The International Court of Justice holds a hearing to hear South Africa's arguments in its request for further provisional measures to protect the Palestinians in Rafah. The presidents of China and Russia signed a declaration on deepening the relations and global partnership to serve a new and fairer world order. And after the assassination attempt against the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico, the Interior Minister of the country declared that the nation is on the brink of civil war and asked to ease tensions. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. In the Netherlands, the International Court of Justice is holding a hearing on request of South Africa, which submitted arguments to the Israeli incursion in the city of Rafah, which it considers to be part of the genocidal operation that continues to threaten Palestinians. We are seeing now some live images in which South African lawyers have started the audition at the headquarters of the highest jurisdiction of the United Nations organization. They seek to sue Israel and order a stop to the fire in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, on Friday, Israel will make known its own position on the conflict that they themselves have been generating since October 2023. It should be noted that in January of this year, Pretoria filed a complaint with the ICJ against the acts committed by the Tel Aviv regime against the Gaza Strip in order to prevent further acts of genocide that harm the welfare of the Palestinians.
In view of the prolonged and widespread deprivation of food and other basic necessities to which the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip have been subjected, the court issued its orders clearly highlighting the worsening conditions of life faced by Palestinians in Gaza. Israel was ordered to ensure with immediate effect that its military, through any action, does not commit acts which violate the rights of Palestinians under the Genocide Convention. So far, Mr. President, what I have said is not inference, not imputation. It is direct knowledge which bears on the state of Israel, its political leaders, and the members of its army. They know about Rafah and its centrality to the sustenance of Palestinian life at the present moment. They know the views of the organs of the United Nations about the consequences of a...
And while we'll continue to follow closely the updates from the International Court of Justice, let's hear to how South African Ambassador Busi Madonsela introduced their new petition for new provisional measures to protect the Palestinians just minutes ago.
Sadly, South Africa is yet again compelled to return to this court in recognition of its obligation under the Genocide Convention due to the continuing annihilation of the Palestinian people, with over 35,000 now killed and most of Gaza reduced to rubble. Despite the short notice of this oral hearing, South Africa has traveled here today to do what it can to urgently stop the ongoing genocide. The gravity of the attacks requiring urgent and speedy proceedings to preserve the rights of the Palestinian people, a commitment which South Africa takes seriously.
Also in this context, the South African diplomat highlighted that it's the lack of countermeasures from the international community what has allowed Israel to continue carrying out the present genocide.
Israel is escalating its attacks on Palestinians in Gaza, and in so doing is willfully breaching the binding orders of this court. Israel similarly breaches the binding resolutions of the United Nations Security Council, erroneously believing from the lack of countermeasures by the international community that it is exempt from having to respect international law. This institutionalized impunity has led Israel to engage in this genocide, which has shocked the conscience of humanity.
Meanwhile, international non-governmental organizations on Thursday condemned the Israeli army's assault on Rafah and demanded that the international community take urgent action to stop human rights violations. In a joint statement, UN officials and humanitarian NGOs denounced that despite multiple calls by the international community, the Tel Aviv government to abstain from expanding its ground offensive into Rafah, Israeli troops entered the area on May 7th. In this sense, they also pointed out that the United States bears a significant responsibility for the human rights violations committed by Israel as the main supplier of arms, while reiterating that the evacuation orders is a grave violation of international humanitarian law. In Palestine, the 76th anniversary of the Nakba is commemorated, the date on which thousands of Palestinians were displaced from their homes by the Israeli occupation forces.
In the previous Nakba, this was not felt. I did not witness it, my family tells me. But now in this Nakba we don't know where we are going. The Jews are insidious. Today a Jewish minister declared that they want to continue displacing us. For them, this land where we are standing is too much for us. In spite of the catastrophes, the destruction and the humiliations, it seems to them that this land is too big for us. They want to take us out of our land, to make everything calm and to stay in our place. This is how the Jews have thought all their lives.
And as part of the commemoration of the 76th anniversary of the Palestinian Nakba, citizens commemorated this historic date of the forced displacement of the Palestinian people by the Israeli forces.
I witnessed the Nakba, or the catastrophe of 2020 and 2023. I did not live through the Nakba of the 48, but I heard about it from my grandparents. They said that there were forced displacements and many migrations. They also told us about the Nakba of the 67 and all the previous events. But today's Nakba, in which we are displaced, we are inhabitants of the Yablia refugee camp. Our houses were destroyed. Our houses and those of our neighbors were demolished. In our family 11 martyrs were killed. We were displaced to Rafah. We were told that it was a safe area and that it had humanitarian conditions. But in reality in Rafah we saw that we have no hospitals, no water, no electricity. There is nothing here.
In other news, the United States Central Command announced this Thursday a new crime against Palestine and the international law, the anchoring of a floating pier on the coast of Gaza. The pier is a facility with capacity for the handling of weapons and ammunition that has been installed by the best ally of the genocidal state that has murdered more than 35,000 Palestinians. In a press release, Washington clarified that for this operation, no military entered Gaza, while assuring that the pier is temporary and that it will act as a privileged entrance for humanitarian aid, with the United Nations in charge of its distribution. In what appears as a clear disregard for the nation's international waters, no Palestinian authority has authorized the construction of this structure. And Islamic resistance in Iraq reported on Thursday that they have attacked more Israeli military positions with cruise missiles. Through a statement, they reiterated that their operations will not stop as long as Israel continues with the genocide in Gaza. The Iraqi resistance has carried out a total of 243 attacks against targets of the Zionist regime since October 2023. In this way, as reaffirmation of its approach to repulse the occupation, the group also confirmed that the drone strikes aimed at a vital Israeli site in the southern town of Eilat. It is worth noting that they reported on Wednesday the use of long-range Al-Araka type missiles against the enemy targets in areas of the Jericho Valley and the Nevatim air base in Beersheba. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. President of China Xi Jinping and Russia Vladimir Putin signed on Thursday a declaration on deepening relations and global partnership to serve a new and fairer world order. In this regard, the 30-page document, which includes 10 bilateral agreements, was signed by the presidents, guaranteeing strategic interaction between the two leading countries. The ceremony of formalization of this agreement, which will increase the leadership of both Beijing and Moscow in the world, took place after the presidents held a private meeting. In the meantime, they highlighted the model of friendship between their countries and confirmed that they achieved the eradication of the US dollar in more than 90% of their operations. Meanwhile, the Interior Minister of Slovakia, Mateusz declared that the country is on the brink of civil war. The Estok appeared in the local news, accompanied by the Minister of Defense, who declared that a suspect was in custody after the assassination attempt of the Prime Minister of the country. The head of internal politics reiterated that the attack against the Prime Minister was politically motivated. He also called on the country to de-escalate tensions and asked to stop the hatred immediately before the conflict intensifies. Regarding the Slovakian Prime Minister's health, he also assured that his life is out of danger and that he is recovering satisfactorily from his surgery. Robert Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, began his political career in the Communist Party shortly before the Velvet Revolution of 1989, which led to the breakup of the former Czechoslovakia. In 1999, he founded his center-left Smer SD party after being rejected for a ministerial post by the Democratic Left. Fico stated that the Russian President Vladimir Putin would not be arrested by international order if he came to Slovakia. His career over the past 3 decades has been marked by a nationalist and anti-Western vision. In other news, WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Christine Harfson has denounced the legal process surrounding the extradition of journalist Julian Assange from the United Kingdom to the United States as corrupt and rigged. The businessman's statements were made in the framework of a hearing to be held next week to discuss the case and evaluate the granting of a new appeal to the journalist. It should be noted that the London High Court asked the United States government for assurances on the treatment Assange would receive if extradited to Washington. Julian Assange has been facing charges since 2010 for the disclosure of acts of corruption and war crimes committed against Afghanistan and Iraq by the United States.
But I've come to the opinion that that is absolutely the case. This is institutional corruption on a judicial level. Julian Assange is a political prisoner. It's abundantly clear. And I hope that you can look into the case, in the details of the case, where the evidence is basically screaming at you.
Likewise, the wife of journalist Julian Assange, Stella Assange, made a statement regarding the situation faced by the journalist.
I think it's important to understand that he's under huge pressure and he has enormous forces bearing down on him, and he is resisting those day to day. You know? So he's surviving, and he's fighting to survive. And that's a daily battle.
In other news, in Argentina, universities' rectors demanded that the Libertarian President Javier Milei immediately release the funds for higher education expenses. The National Inter-University Council asked the head of state to immediately make effective the 270% increase that he committed to the operating budget of all national universities. They denounced that the only payment made was to the University of Buenos Aires and qualified the decision of the executive as inadmissible and provocative. In the past month, Milei's government has faced one of the largest mobilizations in history on account of his budget cuts on higher education funding. And during an interview with Spanish-French journalist Ignacio Ramonet, the Cuban head of state, Miguel Díaz-Canel, warned that due to a tightening of the illegal U.S. blockade against the country, inflation is on the rise and the internal trade is deteriorating.
We cannot develop the economic activity with all the intensity and capabilities that we have and that we need to offer goods and services. A huge imbalance is created between supply and demand, and therefore prices increase and then inflation appears in a very large scale. On the other hand, we don't have the hard currency that we need to efficiently operate a legal state exchange market. And so an illegal market is created. This is a parallel market that manipulates the exchange rate and helps impose prices and contribute to the inflation problem.
And we stay in Cuba as Venezuelan Foreign Minister Iván Gil met with his Cuban counterpart Bruno Rodriguez to strengthen bilateral relations. During the meeting, the two representatives reviewed the cooperation agreements and strategic alliances between the two countries. The Venezuelan diplomat highlighted Cuban struggle for the construction of socialism in the face of the complex global scenario. Meanwhile, Bruno Rodriguez expressed his unconditional solidarity with Venezuela. Since October 30th, in the year 2000, Venezuela and Cuba have maintained a comprehensive cooperation agreement for mutual benefit in different strategic areas. And we have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday in Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva announced new assistance measures to address the effect of the heavy rains and floods in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. During a visit to the shelters, the president informed all the victims that the government will rebuild the houses lost due to the severe weather conditions that affected 100% of the population. Lula also indicated that those affected would receive a subsidy of $1,000 for material losses. In this sense, the government estimated that 200,000 families will benefit from the new measures. On the other hand, people who became unemployed will have access to 2 additional unemployment insurance payments, and income tax will be exceptionally reinstated for all taxpayers in the affected state. The Bolivian government has authorized the shipment of humanitarian aid to Brazil following the floods that killed the 149 people in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. The Minister of Defense, Edmundo Novillo, assured that the aid will be sent from Bolivia on Tuesday based on the support and the collection carried out by several state institutions. Novillo emphasized that President Luis Arce expressed his solidarity to his Brazilian counterpart, Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. Moreover, the Minister of Defense also recalled that the situation that the Brazilian people are going through after the rains and floods. A tribute to artist Cesar Rengifo was held by the national theater movement that bears his name on a new birth anniversary of this Venezuelan playwright and painter who is remembered for his social legacy. Santiago Corey provides further details.
The Cesar Rengifo Children and Youth Theater Movement performed a musical on the 109th birth anniversary of this defender of cultural identity.
We are very happy with page homage to Cesar Rengifo with this show, comprising national and artist elements. You've been able to see all this day that we celebrate the great mission Long Live Venezuela. The artists choose this selection, and it is a sample of national art. And because we will continue dreaming together with Cesar, we will continue fighting for our beloved homeland.
The movement directed by Pedro Lander promotes the participation and training of children and young people in the performing arts to raise awareness and sensitivity of all Venezuelans about national art.
It really means a lot. It's like you enter another world. It's an unexplainable experience, and the people who are there at that moment, living it, feel it.
By performing different rhythms, they stage the distinctive sound of the different states of the country.
Well, it's my turn to represent the Tamunangue of the Lara state. The Tamunangue is a black area. You can call it like that. It's a tradition, like a ritual of promise for Thanksgiving, for believers. And men wear a white shirt, a red scarf, a hat of cogollo, they wear trousers, and women just wear floral skirts and white or other colored shirts. I'll tell you, you should come and see it, because it's a superb, cool play that we put a lot of strength into it. We gave it a lot of emotion, joy, and we make our best efforts.
Dozens of people recall the birth of the figure who made his work an instrument to make visible the feelings and struggle of the people for a fairer and more united world.
Desde la Cámara de Jesús Romero.